After a very eventful, not E3 weekend, I really wanted to talk about a bunch of it, and one of the things being the Phil Spencer interview after the Xbox showcase with Ryan McCaffrey from IGN. And there's three things about the interview I want to talk about. I want to talk about his comments on the closures of the Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin, even though he mostly talked about Tango. I want to talk about the uh, little conversation they had about the Xbox handheld, which we didn't see this weekend. And I want to talk about the exclusivity commentary that he had. So let's get into it. Let's start off with the closures. It was interesting that when Ryan asked him about that, he kind of just said, he has to make hard choices in the position he's in that he doesn't like to make, and that's what they do to remain viable. And what was kind of frustrating about it for me, there's multiple things, right? It's another non-answer, So the most direct responses we've gotten to those closures, especially Tango, but Arcane Austin and the other two studios as well, was Sarah Bond the next day kind of getting ambushed, probably not realizing that was going to happen before that Bloomberg interview, where she gave what was essentially a non-answer, and then Phil as well, who knew this question was coming, surely, and still didn't really give much. And I understand the frustration of that. I'm frustrated by it too, to a point. And the reason I say to a point is because I think they are saying the most politically correct or the nicest thing they can say is it was a business decision. We don't like making those, but we have to make them. Because I think that if you get below the surface of that answer, and if they gave any real answer, the answer would be mean. It would be cruel. And then I don't think they should do that. I don't think Phil should do that. I don't think they should drag those studios just to give people the answers they're frothing for multiple reasons. The main one being it would be cruel. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't. Answering that these were not viable studios, that neither of these studios, especially Tango, but Arcane Austin as well. Arcane Austin hadn't had like a hit game since Dishonored that it co-developed like 10 plus years ago with Arcane Paris, their other studio that's currently doing another project, Blade. They haven't done anything viable, and Redfall was a huge failure. It just was, and there's a lot of reasons behind it. That they lost a lot of important staff there, and then you move over to Tango, which is a little more inexplicable because they just had a critical darling in Hi-Fi Rush, but it wasn't a financial darling. It didn't sell well. There's lots of reasons behind that. It's partially because it was a cheaper game, partially because it was on Game Pass, partially because it was shadow dropped. There's a lot of reasons for it, but it probably didn't make money. It probably lost money, and that's coming from a studio who before that made Ghostwire Tokyo, which was a multi-platform game and bombed and was mediocre. And then before that had the Evil Within games, which I believe one of them was like relatively successful, like the first one, but overall hasn't been. And you're looking at these games, these two studios that I just think that if they gave the real reason for why those studios got shut down, it would be cruel. And it wouldn't be like, so say they did it. Say they said, yeah, especially those two big studios, they just, not to mention Tango losing their founder, who was the main reason for that studio to exist. They could give the honest answer and people would only be more angry. So like they're given the best answer I think they can give to be nice and to give the same effect that the honest answer would give. Talking about the handheld, it's so obvious they're doing a handheld at this point. He's even to the point where he, for in some capacity, basically confirmed that they would be doing that it will play games natively. It will not be a streaming box, which was rumored this week before the show. Because oddly enough, right as things are, when things go good for Xbox, weird, stupid rumors always pop up. It's very strange. I simply can't believe it. And that seems obvious. I've seen some discourse about whether or not that's even a good idea for them with the state they're in the hardware battle in the game industry. I think the real thing to consider is how much better a handheld would have been than the Series S. I know the Series S is very popular. They've sold probably 2/3 of their sales are probably Series S's, or at least half. Um, I think a lot of those people would have bought Series X's though if they didn't have S's. Um, I just I think the current gen, the Series S and X, the issue is that you have two consoles that aren't that far apart on price and are fairly far apart on performance, and it's just they're like too similar. Where I think if the S was a handheld instead that filled a completely different niche that was still dockable, you could have what the S is, the cheaper budget option that has lower fidelity, but it would also be portable. And that would be a big draw to some people. And it would be a draw to people with X's. I know for a fact if the Series S was a handheld this gen, I would have a Series X under my desk, and I would probably have a Series S as well that I could dock down in my living room and play with my family if we choose to, or that I could take on the go with me if I, have downtime somewhere between meetings or something like that. Which is the strategy I think they're going to go for in the next gen, which I think starts as soon as 2026. I think they'll release both. I think it's a good idea. And we could even see a reemergence of that streaming box. If they had a streaming dongle or whatever, if they had a handheld and then they had the home console, those are three devices that would be realistic for one person to have. Where I don't think that's the current case with the S. So this handheld, I think, is a really good idea, especially if it's done the right way. I actually did expect it to get shown this weekend, because if you don't pay attention to the PC side of things, Snapdragon, some new CPUs and GPUs and everything together. There's some new tech coming out that's going to be seen in laptops that is essentially as powerful, if not more so, than anything on the PC side from Apple or Intel or AMD. That is as powerful, if not more, is way more efficient, and has a ton of potential to be a really big deal when it comes to these handhelds and these mobile gaming platforms. There is an AMD CPU that has a GPU integrated into it that basically every single current handheld is using, and it's fine. It does a good job, but it's not the best. It's really not that good, and it's terrible on battery. Where this new Snapdragon solution, which is what I'm betting they're going to use, because there's been rumors about a similar solution for the premium hardware that they're developing for next gen. I'm betting that something along that lines is going to get used because it's very powerful, and it has like 2 to 3 times the battery life of the current things being used. So I thought that would happen. I suspect it's more likely this winter. I think it would be not surprising if we get to some kind of winter showcase or early 2025 and they announce the next gen consoles. I think that is extremely likely. So we'll have to wait and see. The final thing being the conversation about exclusives. He did confirm, they talked about how Doom, the Dark Ages game, is going to be on PlayStation 5, I believe day one, which surprised me a little bit. And then talking about how like Call of Duty is obviously multi-platform. He even kind of dunked on PlayStation a little bit by kind of making fun of them and how they always made like the beta exclusive and stuff like that to PlayStation, which they're not doing anymore. They're not doing that with Xbox. And that conversation is just so interesting to me because at least my outlook on it is still at this point is that ideally if they do multi-platform, it's like a delayed exclusivity, right? Like I don't like seeing the day and day is kind of just like annoying because I feel like they're kind of losing on something there. But if you actually watch the video, because the clip of him talking or the quote of him talking about multi-platform is everywhere, but then when he talks about why they're doing it, he talks about how he talked to the director of the Doom game and said, "Hey, like, what do you want to do?" And the Doom director said, "I want to be on everything. I want to be on PlayStation and Xbox." And he said, "Okay." Like, it wasn't like and which means that was a decision they made 3 or 4 years ago. It's not even like it's part of this current Latitude project that's been, talked about a lot, of doing the multi-platform stuff. And like, for me, as long as Xbox still has Game Pass, and as long as they're still making their own hardware, it doesn't matter where the games are. Now, the purist in me, the Xbot in me, doesn't want to see Halo on PlayStation, doesn't want to see Gears on PlayStation. I don't want to see Forza over there. Like, there is a red line for me, right? And supposedly, from recent reporting, there's a red line for Xbox too, where they've made it clear that there will be exclusives, that they are not completely giving that up, but they're going to have situations where multi-platform makes sense for their titles, Doom being one of them. And I kind of love the idea of them asking, the actual developers about that, what they would prefer. Because we know that there is at least some rumors, and from the ABK email leaks, there was some tension, I believe, between Bethesda and Xbox about, why isn't Starfield going to be multi-platform? Because that's what they wanted. And I'm hoping this is Xbox implementing those lessons and saying, we should hear out the devs. Like, we should hear them out and do what they want, and not just be so bullheaded like some of the other platforms about this stuff. Because one of the things I'll interject is that we found out during the state of play that there's this Lego Horizon game coming out that is going to Nintendo. It's not coming to Xbox, of course. And the discourse around a PlayStation first party IP getting put on the Switch, which makes sense because there's 150 million Switches, and that's clearly a kid's game. Of course you put it on the Switch. That discourse was almost non-existent. But then, Doom's going to PlayStation, and it's the end of the world, according to influencers, creators, and journalists. I just, the whole conversation is so dumb to me, because if you hear out, devs, if you hear out Phil, if you actually listen to his entire interviews and not just the sound clips that get clipped out, they're just business decisions they're making. They're just saying some games will be multi, some games won't be, and we'll be working on what games those are, and our strategy is probably going to adjust as time goes on. It's not this like existential crisis that a bunch of these weirdo influencers and content creators who are clickbaiting, and journalists who are also clickbaiting, are making it out to be this crazy deal. So I just, I've seen all this chatter about them not being clear about their messaging and stuff. They are being clear. Some games will be multi-platform, some games won't be, and we'll find out what they are. It shouldn't matter. But that's just my opinion. So I thought that interview was interesting. I thought it was pretty weak stuff by Ryan McCaffrey. He didn't really ask any follow-up questions. He did his kind of typical doofy, I'm going to ask a hard one now kind of stuff. I don't know. I didn't think he did a very good job. I thought it was kind of awful, actually. But maybe he did the best he could. I don't know. But I thought there was some good info that came out of it, and some really bad takes that have come out of it as well. So there's all my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments if you want more videos about Xbox and Phil Spencer and all of that stuff, or just gaming news in general. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the like button if you like the video. And like I said before, comment down below. If you really want to support everything I do, consider becoming a YouTube member, where you get videos like this one early. You get a cool little tag beside your name when you comment, as well as some other cool stuff. And you help me do these things and spend more time on it. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.